They were dead before they even knew they were under attack. Not wounded, not retreating. Dead. The first explosion didn't warn anyone. It erased an entire artillery crew in a single second. One moment of fully operational battery. Next moment, nothing but a crater. No incoming sound, no visible enemy, no time to react. Then the second hit. Perfect accuracy, direct impact. Another gun destroyed. Then a third. Within seconds, positions across the line begin disappearing one by one. Not randomly, not scattered, but precisely. Like someone is targeting each gun on a list. Officers scream for direction. Find the source! Return fire! Where are they shooting from? No one answers. Because no one sees anything. Binoculars go up. Every ridge scanned. Every hill checked. Every possible artillery position searched. Nothing. No smoke, no flashes, no movement. Just empty terrain. And incoming fire that never misses. Another explosion tears through the right flank. A gun is flipped into the air like it weighs nothing. Men don't even get the chance to run. They disappear inside the blast. This isn't suppression. This is elimination. And it's happening too fast. You try to calculate distance, angle, direction. It doesn't add up. Artillery doesn't work like this. It can't. To hit like this, they should be visible. To fire like this, they should expose themselves. But they don't. And that's when the panic changes. At first, it's confusion. Then urgency. Then something worse. Realization. This is not normal fire. This is controlled, measured. Someone knows exactly where every single gun is positioned. Another hit, center mass. Another battery gone. Men begin adjusting aim toward empty hills, firing blindly, hoping for a reaction. Nothing. No response fire. No counter battery. No confirmation. Just silence. And then another shell. Closer, louder, more precise. You're not fighting back. You're being removed, systematically. 10 minutes. That's all it takes. 10 minutes for most of the artillery line to collapse. Not pushed back, not damaged, deleted. And still, no enemy in sight. No visible guns. No movement. No explanation. Some soldiers stop reloading. Others keep firing into nothing. One of them lowers his weapon slowly and just stares at the horizon. Because something is wrong. Not just tactically, fundamentally. This isn't a stronger enemy. This is a different kind of war. A war where visibility doesn't matter. A war where distance doesn't protect you. A war where your position is already known before you even fire. Another explosion hits behind the line. Supply wagons gone. Horses scattered. Smoke rising everywhere. And still, no source. At this point, fear is no longer about dying. It's about something worse. You cannot locate the threat. You cannot respond. You cannot adapt. Because whatever is hitting you is operating outside everything you were trained to understand. Somewhere out there, someone is watching. Not guessing. Not estimating. Watching. Tracking every movement, every position, every adjustment. And correcting fire with terrifying precision. And you? You are standing in the open, visible, predictable, already calculated. This isn't a battle anymore. This is execution. And the most dangerous part? You still don't know how it's being done. They trained for a war that no longer existed. Everything they knew was already outdated. Every rule, every formation, every instinct. Wrong. They were taught one simple truth. If you can see the enemy, you can destroy him. So they climbed higher. Artillery was always placed on hills, on ridges, on open ground. Not because it was safe, but because it worked. You needed visibility. You needed line of sight. You needed to see your target, adjust your aim, and fire again. That's how artillery dominated battlefields for decades. And that's exactly why they were now dying so fast. Because the moment you take the high ground, you become visible, predictable, easy to find, easy to destroy. Another explosion hits a ridge. Direct impact. A perfectly placed artillery gun, elevated, exposed, textbook position, disappears in a second. Not unlucky, not random, expected. Because every one of those positions was exactly where it was supposed to be. And that made them easy targets. Officers still give the same commands. Hold position, adjust elevation, return fire. But none of it works. Because the enemy isn't playing by those rules. They are not on the ridges. They are not in sight. They are not exposing themselves at all. And that's the problem. Because everything about this army depends on visibility. Spot the enemy, aim at the enemy, destroy the enemy. Simple, reliable, deadly. Until now. Now the system collapses. Because you cannot aim at what you cannot see. You cannot suppress what you cannot locate. You cannot fight a target that does not exist in your field of vision. Still, the soldiers keep trying. They adjust guns toward empty hills, fire into nothing, wait for a reaction. Nothing comes back. No counterfire, no correction, no confirmation, just silence. And then another incoming shell, perfectly placed, again, and again, and again. This isn't a stronger army. This isn't even a better army. This is a smarter system. One that removed the single most important weakness of artillery, exposure. Traditional artillery had a fatal flaw. To be effective, it had to be seen. Guns had to reveal their position. Smoke, flash, sound. Every shot told the enemy exactly where to strike back. And that's why artillery crews used to suffer the highest casualties on the battlefield. Because they were always visible, always exposed, always targetable. But now, someone has removed that weakness completely. No smoke to trace, no flash to follow, no visible position to attack, just impact. Accurate, relentless, unstoppable. The soldiers begin to realize it slowly, not through explanation, through loss. Every destroyed gun is a message. Every explosion is proof. The rules they trusted no longer protect them. And worse, those same rules are now killing them. Because every textbook position, every perfect placement, every strategic decision is exactly where the enemy expects them to be, and exactly where the next shell will land. You can feel it in the way the line moves. Less coordination, more hesitation. Men start doubting commands, not openly, but internally, because something doesn't add up. They are doing everything right, and still losing everything, faster than ever before. This isn't a failure of courage, it's a failure of understanding. They are fighting a war based on sight, against an enemy that no longer needs to see them. And that changes everything. Because if vision is no longer required, then distance is irrelevant. Terrain is irrelevant. Positioning is irrelevant. The entire battlefield becomes exposed, and suddenly nowhere is safe. Not the hills, not the rear lines, not even positions that should be protected. Because wherever they go, they are already known, already calculated, already targeted. Another explosion hits the rear, supply destroyed. Men scatter, command breaks down, and still no enemy. At this point, it becomes clear. This is not just a tactical disadvantage. This is a complete mismatch. Two different wars happening at the same time. One side still fighting the past, the other already operating in the future. And the gap between them is measured in seconds. Seconds between impact and destruction. Seconds between confusion and realization. Seconds between life and being erased from a battlefield you don't even understand anymore. And the worst part? They still don't know how it's being done. Not yet. But they're about to find out. And when they do, it will already be too late. They weren't invisible. They were just somewhere you would never look. Not on the hills, not in the open. Not where artillery was supposed to be. Far behind the mountains, hidden, protected, untouchable. And that's what made them lethal. Because the guns were never meant to be seen. Only the impact was. High above the battlefield, on a quiet ridge, one man watches everything. No panic, no shouting, no chaos, just a telescope and a telephone. He doesn't fire a weapon. He doesn't move with the infantry. He doesn't even leave his position. But every explosion below starts with him. He adjusts the lens, focuses, finds the target. An artillery position, clearly visible, perfectly exposed, exactly where it's supposed to be. He doesn't rush, he doesn't guess. He measures, distance, angle, elevation. Then he reaches for the telephone. A simple field device, a wooden box, a wire stretching miles across the terrain, over rocks, through trenches, down the slopes, into places no enemy can see. He turns the handle, waits. A voice answers somewhere far behind the mountains, calm, ready. He speaks, short, precise, no emozzi. Left, slight correction, add range, fire. Miles away, guns respond. Cannons that cannot see the battlefield. Cannons that cannot see the enemy. Cannons that rely only on numbers. They adjust. Angles change, elevation set, charges calculated. And then, they fire. The shells rise into the air, disappearing behind mountains. For a moment, nothing. Then, impact. Direct hit. Back on the ridge, the observer doesn't react. He simply watches, tracks the explosion, sees the result, and makes another correction. Again, and again, and again. This isn't guesswork. This is control. One man directing destruction across an entire battlefield. And he's not alone. Across multiple ridges, dozens of observers are doing the same thing. Connected, coordinated, linked by wire. A network, a system. Every observer sees, every battery fires, every target is calculated. And that's the difference. Because this is no longer artillery. This is information. The battlefield is no longer about who shoots first. It's about who knows more. Every Russian gun on the hills is visible. Every position exposed. Every movement noticed. And every one of them already mapped, already calculated, already assigned as a target. The Japanese guns don't need to see anything. They already know where to fire, because someone else sees for them. And that changes everything. Distance no longer matters. Mountains no longer protect. Visibility is no longer required. The battlefield becomes a grid. Coordinates, numbers, angles. And if you exist on that grid, you can be destroyed. Even if the enemy never sees you directly. Even if you never see him at all. Back on the front line, the Russians still don't understand. They see only the result: perfect strikes, unreachable enemy, unstoppable fire. But they don't see the system behind it. Not yet. They think it's accuracy. They think it's luck. They think it's better guns. But it's none of that. It's coordination. It's communication. It's something they don't have. Because while they are looking forward, the real war is happening somewhere else. Behind the mountains, through wires, through voices, through calculations. And by the time they realize this, it's already too late. Because the system is already working, already optimized, already destroying everything they rely on. Gun by gun, position by position, without ever revealing itself. This is the moment war changes. Not louder, not bigger, smarter, more precise, more distant, more controlled. and far more dangerous. Because from now on, you don't need to see your enemy to eliminate him completely. They didn't lose because they were weaker. They lost because they were already outdated. By the time the battle reached its peak, the outcome was already decided, not by numbers, not by courage, not even by firepower, by understanding. Across the battlefield, everything starts to collapse at once. Artillery? Gone. Positions? Broken. Supply lines hit with precision. Every attempt to regroup fails. Every movement is punished. Every mistake is immediately exploited. And the worst part? There are no mistakes left to fix. Because everything they do is already predictable. Entire sections of the line begin to fall back. Not in order, not in formation, just movement, survival. Units that once held strong positions are now abandoning them without a fight, because staying means instant destruction. Officers try to restore control. They shout orders, they redirect units, they demand resistance, but control is already gone. Because control requires information, and they have none. They don't know where the enemy is. They don't know where the next strike will land. They don't even know which positions are still safe. And that changes everything. Because once uncertainty takes over, discipline begins to crack. The battlefield stretches for miles, and everywhere the same pattern repeats. Explosions, retreat, silence. Then more explosions. Entire artillery groups are wiped out before they can fire more than a few shots. Infantry units move forward, only to be hit before they even reach engagement range. Rear positions, once considered secure, are suddenly destroyed without warning. Nowhere is protected. Nowhere is hidden. Nowhere is safe. This is no longer a battle. It's a system collapsing under pressure it was never designed to handle. And on the other side, everything is working exactly as intended. Observers continue watching, calm, precise, uninterrupted. Coordinates are passed, adjustments are made, fire is directed, and the system keeps running. No panic, no confusion, no wasted movement. Every strike serves a purpose. Every shot removes a target. Every minute shifts the balance further, until there is no balance left. Days pass. The fighting doesn't stop, but it changes. It becomes slower, heavier, more desperate. Because one side is still trying to fight, while the other is simply executing a process. And processes don't get tired. They don't hesitate. They don't lose focus. They just continue, until nothing is left to process. When the order to retreat finally comes, it doesn't feel like defeat. It feels inevitable. Because the battle wasn't lost in that moment. It was lost the second the rules changed. Tens of thousands are gone, artillery destroyed, equipment abandoned, positions erased from the map. But the real impact isn't measured in losses. It's measured in what comes next. Because people were watching. Observers from across the world. Germany, Britain, France, the United States. They saw everything. Not just the battle, the method, the system, the future. And they understood something immediately. This wasn't just a victory. This was a warning. Because from this point forward, war would never be the same again. Artillery would no longer need visibility. Armies would no longer rely on line of sight. Battlefields would no longer be defined by terrain, but by information. Who sees first? Who calculates faster? Who controls the system? World War I would prove it. Every major army would adopt the same principles. Forward observers, indirect fire, hidden artillery, coordinated strikes. What happened here was not an isolated moment. It was the beginning, a complete transformation of how war is fought. And the most dangerous part? It didn't require new weapons. It didn't require bigger guns. It required something far simpler: connection, calculation, coordination, the ability to see without being seen. And once that idea existed, it could never be undone. Because you can adapt to strength. You can adapt to numbers. You can even adapt to loss. But adapting to something you cannot see is a different kind of war entirely. A war where the enemy is always present but never visible. A war where the battlefield is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. A war where the first sign of danger is already too late. And from that moment on, every army in the world understood one thing: you don't need to face your enemy to destroy him completely.